Hey guys, very good morning. Today we are going to discuss 1 Corinthians chapter 1 verse 1 to 17 in our Bible study. So, before starting our Bible study, we have to read this passage thoroughly for better understanding. Find answers to the following questions to help you understand God's word in the word of life. The first question: what are the common words used in this passage? And second one is who is writing, and third one whom is it written to, when was it written, and why is author writing. And next questions we have to ask ourselves from that passage. The first question is who is in the text of the given text. The second question is there any sin that I must confess? Is there any warning that I should head to? The fourth question is there any commandment that I have to obey? And fifth question, is there any model for me to follow? And the sixth question, do I have any promise to own it from the passage? And seventh question, what is the main lesson that God has given me in this sentence? And last and final question, decision making. What kind of decision that we have taken from this passage? And when we look at history of the first Corinthians chapter 1 to verse 1 to 17, a major city at the time on the isthmus connecting the two parts of Greece, and major in trades as land and sea travel passed through, an entertainment center and host of the isthmus games, capital of a Roman province, a center of pagan worship and the temple to Aphrodite, thousand or more temple prostitutes, a city with gross immorality, such that behaving like a Corinthian became an idiom for gross immorality. And founding of the church. First leader of the Corinthian church, Paul, traveled there on his second missionary journey. When you look at Acts chapter 18, verse 11, we can find that. Met Aquila and Priscilla, worked in Corinth preaching and tent making 1.5 years. Were joined by Timothy and Silas. Met much resistance and was charged by the Jews before the court, case thrown out. And after Paul left, Apollos became the next pastor. And Paul wrote another letter before First Corinthians to correct them in some areas. When you look at First Corinthians chapter 5 verse 9, but it was lost. And the outline of this passage, verse 1 to 1 to 17, we have segregated in three parts. The first part we can see like greetings. The senders, Paul and Sosthenes. The recipients, church at Corinth, and the supervisor is God. And the second part is thanksgiving for God's work in their lives, verse 4 to 9. We can look at the below things like God's grace in their lives and God's enrichment in their lives, God's salvation in their lives, and God's gifts in their lives, God's future work in their lives, and God's faithfulness in their lives. And at the same time, this is the third part, the call for unity. Verse 10 to 17, we are going to see the call for unity, and verse 10 the call, and verse 11 to 12 the conflict, and verse 13 the center, and verse 14 to 17 the conclusion. And discussion questions, we can prepare so many questions from this passage according to uh, our reading. And first one is, what can you tell me about Corinth? And second, is it important to know something about the background of the city and church of Corinth? Why or why not? What do you know about the background of the city of Corinth? And fourth one is, how about the background of the church at Corinth? Fifth one is, knowing this, what kind of struggles might the people of Corinth had? And the sixth one is, who are the three groups mentioned in the greetings? And why would Paul say so many positive things in verse 4 to 9 from this passage when the Corinthian church was all messed up? Who was Paul saying the positive thing about? Who is getting the credit? What does verse 6 mean? And if the Corinthian church was not lacking any gift, how about other churches or believers today? We have to answer ourselves when we are going through this passage. We can get all the answers for these questions. If Corinthian church was not lacking any gift, how about other churches or believers today? What is the first problem identified in the Corinthian church? What was causing the divisions? At the same time, we have so many questions to discuss from this passage. Why were people divided by these kinds of things? And even if you can look at recent past or present, and we have seen so many quarrels and so many churches are divided, isn't it? So it was started earlier like this. What was what was God's will for them? Why are there so many divisions in the church these days? What should we do to limit divisions and reach for unity? What do you notice about Paul's attitude in it as one of their leaders? What can we learn from this? Why is Paul glad he didn't baptize many of the people? So we have to read thoroughly for these questions. We can addressing all questions here when you go through passes. The first part we can see Paul starts off praising God for his work in the Corinthians. They were still far from perfect, as we will see later, but there were many true believers who came to Christ out of a completely pagan and evil environment. Notice, Paul is not building up the Corinthians for what they have done or accomplished. Rather, he is calling attention to God's work in their lives. It is all God's work and not their own. Paul didn't want them getting conceited or frightful with the progress they had made. And you look at second part, a call for unity in the church. Nothing we can see because it is a call. In the third part we can see Paul's humility as a leader. Many leaders would feel very good that their group was so loyal to them. They would welcome this loyalty and respect. In fact, many would feel that they deserve it and get upset if this loyalty or respect was not shown to them. This happens often even in Christian ministry. Leaders feel the need to be stroked and thanked. Why they feel this when they have the wrong motivations? Maybe they want to feel successful businessman who enjoys reporting about his company's success and growth. A missionary or pastor or teacher can point to his group of 20 or 100 or 50, 500 people and feel that they have done a great job. It is the result of Christians building their own little kingdom to rule over as opposed to building God's kingdom. It is the result of pride and wrong motivations. So, but Paul and I'm sure Apollos hated this attitude among the Corinthians. They didn't want the loyalty. They didn't want a bunch of separate groups. They realized that they were not the masters. They were not the kings. They were shepherds taking care of the sheep. But the sheep didn't belong to them. The sheep belonged to Christ. Paul knows there is only one head of the church and that is not him. I hope you can understand these three parts has covered. If you want, you can go back to those discussion questions and you can find the answers when you read thoroughly passage. The cross references when you look at Act chapter 18 verse 17, Sosthenes was a ruler of synagogue, beaten for not succeeding in his case against Paul at the time. And when you look at Act chapter 18 verse 24 to 28, we can see Apollos, right? And Act chapter 18 and 11 also, Paul had traveled there on his second missionary journey and confirm you to the end. And Ephesians chapter 1 verse 12, similar idea of giving the glory and praising God for his work in the Ephesians even to the end. In verse 10 we can see urge. And First Corinthians chapter 4 16 and Second Corinthians chapter 5 20, Second Corinthians chapter 6 verse 1 and Second Corinthians chapter 10 verse 1. Other times in the books Paul urged or pleaded with them. And verse 10 to 14, First Corinthians chapter 1 verse 10 to 14, divisions and unity. And First Corinthians chapter 11 to 18, he heard there were divisions among them. And First Corinthians 12 and Ephesians chapter 12 verse 25 and chapter 12 and verse 12 to 13, the chapter is on being unified and working together. And Philippians chapter 2 verse 2, make my joy complete by being of one mind and spirit and love. So we can see so many cross references like this. Ephesians chapter 4 verse 13, there is a connection between maturity and unity. And Ephesians chapter 4 verse 2 to 5, make every effort to be unified, one Lord and one baptism, humility, patience and tolerance are required. Colossians chapter 3 verse 12 to 14, be patient and gentle and especially be loving, and this will bring unity. When you look at Romans chapter 15 verse 5 to 6, unity is so that we can glorify God with one mind and with one spirit. When you look at Psalms 133 verse 1, how good and how pleasant it is for brothers to dwell together in unity. So what is the conclusion from this passage? What we have to do? What are the action items we have to do? Have regular prayer. We have to have regular prayer, and we have to have regular Bible reading or quiet time. We have to speak with God. We have to uh, fellowship and connection with God. We have to attend Bible studies regularly, and we have to attend church regularly. We have to maintain good fellowship with co-believers as well as other church members also. So when we follow all these action items, then we will have a good fellowship with God, and we can grow in our life. I hope you can understand this Bible study. We'll meet in our next Bible study. God bless you. Thank you.